Welcome to Swank and Ment's Off the Fence, where Mr. Mentz and Mrs. Swank answer questions relating to whatever topics you provide.
If you are a student at GCHS, listen up.
Nothing we say here is the express opinion or view of Greensburg Community Schools. But if you have a question burning a hole through your brain, email us.
Who knows? Your question might inspire us. Now let's get on with the show. Let's do this.
Episode 4.
We got an interesting one this week.
We do. Okay, so the question is, this one was left anonymously on my desk too, so which is kind of interesting. What is the point of life?
Wait.
Yeah.
This is too serious to start with.
Okay, all right. What do you want to do?
Well, you know that thing I was telling you about that we needed to address?
From the hallway?
Yeah, from the hallway.
Right.
It's like...
How do you intro that?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. We're going to talk about farts today.
Okay. That's a topic that I know seniors are interested in. That's for sure.
Well, it's getting bad.
You know, we went from almost, I think I said the point of life, and then you're like, whoa, farts.
Yeah. Well, I didn't, you don't want to start off with like somber, like tone. You really want to kick them in the face, talk about farts.
Right. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. I just have observed that just my classes are just getting way more comfortable with just letting her loose. You
have a lot. Should I talk about gender here? You have a lot of dudes in your class.
Yeah.
Have you heard a fart from a female student? Even one?
I don't know. They don't always claim them,
It's just crop dust and
Yeah. I mean,
so what do you think is the factor that's making that happen right now?
I don't know. And it's not something that I'm not used to. When you come out of the military, you're used to that kind of stuff and foul language and just, weird bodily stuff,
noises.
Noises and just grossness. But, they're like taking it to a whole new level. Like they're really comfortable with it. Burping, farting.
So I'm assuming that they're just ripping them. Not like you walk through a cloud. Because in my classroom, I have a pretty small space compared to you.
Yeah.
And I will be giving out papers or be walking around and I will walk into a cloud fart. Seriously, and through it, because once I get in it, I want to get going.
Sure.
And I can't help but wonder, like, which kid in this vicinity is the one that, and then I have to call attention to it because in my class, it's like, I'm not going to let it go, but I'm like, oh, somebody let out some butt air. What's going on here? Who's the guilty party? And if I have someone like, let's see, Luke Schumann, he'd be like, oh, it's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Schumann, he'll admit to it for sure.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, mine are like, hey, guys, I have to fart.
Oh, an announcement.
Yeah.
And what's the reception?
It's usually, laughter, depending on the type of noise that gets let out, I suppose. But then there's also just like gross noises, like I don't know,
what are we getting
lip
into
smack.
here?
It's kind of, I don't know. These kids are just they're.
You said we were going to talk about farts, but now we're talking about other bodily noises.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to go there.
You know what I did learn today? I learned some strange facts today because of that email that we got, that fun fact email. Your feet sweat a pint. Each foot sweats a pint a day.
A pint?
A pint. That explains socks, right? This like smelly shoes and socks. A pint?
That's a lot.
You know what? I think it's true. I'm not
really?
saying for me personally because my feet don't sweat. I'm a anomalous human being, but a pint.
I could see like a teaspoon or a tablespoon. A pint?
A pint. It evaporates, apparently. Can you imagine what some people's socks must smell like?
Mm-hmm.
They take them off at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Probably worse than their farts.
Well.
I'm so glad we have a productive podcast.
Right.
Some kids have already tuned out. They're like, I didn't tune in to listen to farts.
Well, stay tuned because we're going to get serious on it.
We are. Are you ready now?
Well, no, because I have one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you kind of said it earlier, and I thought it was funny because I listened to a comedian one time. He was talking about that exact thing, like wondering who did the fart.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a funny thing in general. Like, you really want to know whose butt air you're sniffing in? Like, You know what I mean?
That changes the whole nature of.
Because usually somebody farts and it's like, all right, who did it? But then, do you really want to know whose it is? Does it make that much difference?
I had never thought about it like
I've
that.
got this kid's butt hair in my lungs right now.
Gross. I just remembered something I learned in a class somewhere that and I don't know if this is true, but the thing that you smell, we'll have to ask the science teachers unless you know too, but the thing that you smell, there's actual particles of the thing in the smell. So that means there's actual,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about that because now if you put a name to it, you're actually smelling that kid's butt. Are we going to cut this out? Is this going to end up in the episode?
I hope so.
That's
awful.
awful.
We're off the fence. We got to keep it real.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I had never thought about that. I'm never again going to wonder.
Yeah, or at least ask it out loud.
No, I don't think I actually ask it out loud.
Oh.
I think I wonder in my head.
So, I call them out usually.
You want to know who it is?
No, I don't, but I mean.
Do you just pick on a kid like, hey, Schumann, is that your fart? Like, did you fart?
Come on, man. Can you take it outside?
He's going to be like, why do you guys got to talk about me in your podcast?
Yeah, he's going to go all victim on us.
Guaranteed. All right. Are you ready for the real question here?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Here we go. Later on, you can tell me about the other noises you were talking about because I know there's a list in your phone over there.
Yeah.
Calling you out on that. Okay. Here we go. So today's question was anonymously placed on my desk, and I came in from one period to the other, and there it was, and I opened it up, and it said, what is the point of life? If we all die and everyone is forgotten eventually, then what is the point of it all? And, of course, then I saw you in the hallway, like within the next, I don't know, whatever, few hours or whatever, and I was like, hey, we got a question. Even though we have a whole list of other questions.
Right. This one was new and shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of deep. Kind of a deep question.
Yeah.
Had some dark undertones to it a little bit.
Maybe.
Or maybe not, yeah.
Yeah, who knows? You want to start it off?
I mean, this is several different parts to it. Like, what is the point of life?
Right, because the secondary part, if we all die and everyone is forgotten, for me, that's what I honed in on. Like, if we're forgotten, what's the whole point of being here? I kind of, for some reason, I gravitated toward that part. Because I thought, I don't know if it's really about that. The being forgotten. Because for me, I'm not motivated by being remembered. I think it has to do with what each individual person is motivated to be here for, as opposed to, necessarily being remembered. Because if you're not famous, think about it. By the time 2 to 3 generations go by, you're great grandpa so-and-so, or you're some plaque on a wall somewhere. Right. I'm not trying to be negative. I actually don't see it as a negative thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just a name in a line of, generation of ancestors at that point. If you're not famous, or if you don't leave some kind of generational legacy, like a business or something with your name on it. So 99.9 probably % of people are, in fact, forgotten, except for maybe by their closest relatives or whatever legacy they've left within their family.
And then they die too.
And then they die.
Right. And again, this sounds negative, but I don't think it's negative.
It's just part of it.
I think it has to do with experience more than being remembered. Like for me, life is about each experience, the good and the bad, and then living deliberately in those experiences. And the sort of the cycle of, okay, so here's this experience. I can either choose to engage or not. Sometimes we can't choose, right? Things happen and we have to engage with them. But so much of life is a choice to engage in the capital E experience. Like not just, I'm here, you're here, whatever. But we have to make a choice to engage in the experience. And then after the experience, positive or negative, to reflect upon it and then be different or not be different because of it.
But you're making the conscious effort to either engage or disengage.
Right. I think so.
I mean, you're ultimately serving some kind of higher power, some kind of higher authority, no matter what it is. Like the way I kind of took it with the point of life, and I typically I tend to look at things with a Christian worldview, just because that's who I identify with. But I don't want to really go there too much. But that changes your outlook on life significantly if you're looking at it through that lens. Now, if you want to try to extract that part of it and say, what's the point of life? I would say, you can either add a positive experience to your sphere of influence or a negative experience. There's not really too much in between. You're either engaged or you're withdrawn.
Right.
And I think if you're withdrawn, it's probably it's probably something you're meaning to do anyways, and in that case you're still serving some sort of higher authority. This is really
disengagement.
Yeah.
Still serves a higher
Yeah,
authority.
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. Some kind of rebellion of some sort, Like you have to really actively work to really stay disengaged, to withdrawn from society, from the norms of society, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's about, I don't know if you can take religion out of it. If you're a spiritual person, a religious person, I don't know if you really can extract that, because whether you call it, whichever religion you are, whatever you gravitate toward, experience for me comes through I don't want to be all super nerdy, but like the existential part of life, right? The reason, if we're here because we're supposed to be here, because we were put here, or because we just happen to be here, regardless of your belief, then experience in its entirety has to do with some sort of reflection, some sort of change, some sort of fulfillment, some sort of movement of the self from some point to another point. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean a measurable point, but all of the things that generally, whether the experience is good or bad, all of the things that move us toward a more fulfilled life, I guess, in my view, come from the reflective component of thinking, okay, where is the love, acceptance, affirmation, positivity in all things, so that we can go from, I have this thing I'm struggling with, but I can recognize in it that I'm a better person because of it. Or I have this beautiful experience I just had, and now I'm a more fulfilled person. And isn't that on the continuum of whatever spiritual path you see yourself upon too?
I see that. But that takes perspective too, like to see the positive in it. And if you grew up in a crappy situation, you might have a tendency to see negative in things, and you would need some sort of paradigm shift probably to flip the script and make you see in a more positive light. So
I think that takes mentors.
Yeah.
That takes, when you're stuck, it takes somebody coming along and seeing something in you. But, mentorship, though, to me, it takes an acceptance of that opportunity too. Because if the right person comes along, and I think that right people come along in our lives to, interact with us in whatever ways, and we have the choice to jump on board or to not. I don't think it's fated, but I think taking the opportunity to have experiences where someone else can say, yeah, follow me for a little bit. Let me show you some things. Mm-hmm. That's just another form of experience. But it also could be on a spiritual path.
Yeah, you probably have a lesser tendency to capitalize on that mentorship if you haven't identified, what you want out of life, like what you're trying to achieve. Like if you understand like where you think you might be going, then you might start to see some of those mentors come, as they present themselves to you in your life, you might be able to be like, oh yeah, this is one of those things I should probably talk to this person about. If you are trying to accumulate wealth and this is a wealthy person, maybe a business owner, and they've got experience, then you know, as the older you get, the more mature you get in your life, you're going to notice that, you're going to identify it and say, I should talk to this guy. I should find out how, or lady, and or figure out, you know, how did they accumulate wealth, and you know, use that to my advantage. Where you're a little bit younger and more immature, you're not going to recognize that probably for what it is.
Yeah, I can see that. It's sometimes difficult for, you know, to remember what it was like to be. I constantly tell my students, like, oh, it's hard for adults to remember what it was like to be 17. And, you know, even in this discussion, I find myself going, well, it's not that hard. You just jump on opportunity. But, you know, when life is new, and even though they feel like 17 is, some of them feel like, oh, 30's ancient and you should be in the grave. But, you know, relatively new, 17, 25, you know, that kind of thing, is learning quickly to take on opportunity, to live a full life. For me, that's way more important than being remembered. And I completely understand that some people would say, no, being remembered is most important.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of starts with, what was the third part of that question, actually, by the way, before I keep going?
It is so what's the point of life was the first part. Second part, if we all die and everyone is forgotten eventually, then what's the point of it all? I think that's kind of just two parts.
Oh, okay. Got it.
What's the point of life? Which I don't even think we've really touched on.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I know. Do you know?
I could give it from, like I said, from that Christian lens, but I don't know that that's really appropriate for this podcast. Now I do have another podcast if you're interested in that.
Plug it.
But it's not out just yet. So
plug it anyway. Plug it right now.
Well, it sort of has to do with my young men's group. So we don't even really have a name for it or anything right now. It's just kind of, we have like 10 episodes recorded, and they're just kind of sitting there ready to be blasted out. But it's for kind of a future development thing.
Okay, so we'll stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. And if you're interested in that, then you're certainly welcome to come find me and hit me up anytime and take advantage of that mentorship that we were just talking about. What was I doing? Oh, that was kind of loud. What was I going to say? I don't recall. I'm at that point in my day right now where I'm just kind of winding down from...
I got to get you jazzed up a little bit.
Yeah, well, my coffee intake is down.
Intentionally?
Yeah, intentionally. So my gears, my wheels aren't turning quite as much at
3:30?
3:30 in the afternoon as they would have been had I been sitting here with a nice hot cup of Joe.
Gotcha. You know what I would say? Ever since I looked at this question, I thought, I was reminded of Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau. And there's a part in, is it Walden? I don't know. But he says, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And I use this quote a lot from time to time because it's like, you just don't want to fall into seeing your life, like looking at your own life in the moment and thinking, I'm just living quietly but desperately. And there's so many things that I think life is full of ruts. And maybe one of the points of life would be to recognize when you're in a quiet, desperate spot. And I don't think desperate has to be quite so. The connotation of desperate, right, is like we're just clawing or whatever. But it's easy to stay stuck. It's hard to pull out of whatever kind of ruts we get ourselves into, whether it's financial or professional or academic or whatever, right? Athletic or whatever it is. And so if it's true that most men lead lives of quiet desperation, then one of the points of life would be to find the capacity to not do that, to emerge from that.
So if your life is peaks and valleys, then you're always just identifying when you're going up the hill and not when you're at the top or when you're kind of in that transitional phase between the top and the bottom kind of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I think you can live at the top pretty high on the hog when you get your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
But I mean, you and I are very similar. We are like, you want this thing, go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go figure out how to do it. Right? It's hard to imagine, yeah, there's nothing I want. There's nothing I want to do. I'm good right here. Stagnation for me, and I won't necessarily speak for you, but stagnation for me is uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
And so to answer this question, you're talking to, at least for me, a person who's like, well, I mean, life is about all these components, and it's about going and experiencing and finding things out and growing and using your intuition and becoming a better person. But that's probably, that answer would change. That answer would have, oh geez, let me change this. That question would have as many answers in the hallways of the school, adults and kids, as people.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's easy to get complacent too. This is where my point was earlier. I finally came back to it. It's very easy to get complacent and just kind of get stuck in that route, like you were talking about, and not really take advantage of the time that you're given. Like that is the one. That's the one thing that we can't just get back. You know, it's what's it called? The non-renewable resource, right? So everyone's given the exact same amount of time in the day, and if you don't know where your time is being attributed to, then it's probably not. It's not adding value to your life, I would assume. We do an exercise back in my class where you just, let's look at our phones and see how much time we spend on our phones each day. And I know we're starting to sound like old fogies here, but I mean, if you're spending 10, 12 hours on your phone every day, I mean, you're probably not adding much value to your life, as opposed to, if you were out being active or, I don't know, just trying to figure out how you can start moving forward or moving upward. And that will just continue to snowball into a life that's, I don't know, just
stagnant.
Yeah, stagnant, futile.
Yeah.
So.
Man, this was heavy.
Yeah. But I also think, too, you need to, if you are at the point where you cannot identify what you want out of life, you can at least flip the script and say, this is what I don't want out of life.
Sure.
Like, I've seen futile. I do not want that. And that at least is a motivator to start moving in the other direction.
Yep. And unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, sometimes there's people in our lives who we can look to and say, I don't know what I want, but I don't want to be that.
Right.
Yep. And you're right. That's something.
Mm-hmm. But we're all going to die, so we don't have to worry about that.
That's a great way to end it.
Yeah. That's one less thing to worry about. It's gonna come no matter what.
That is so true. Death and taxes. I hate to be like,
it's a cliche. Man. Don't get me started on taxes. I had a thing
yesterday.
It's
after April 15th. So.
I don't even know if I want to get into it. No, I'm not even talking about those taxes.
Oh.
So I bought my truck in Ohio. Sorry, we're going in a different direction real quick. I bought my truck in Ohio, 6% sales tax there. They charged me Indiana sales tax. I didn't realize it at the time.
Just because you're an Indiana resident?
Because I'm an Indiana resident. I'm like, man, if I go buy a TV in Ohio, they're not going to charge me 7%. Right. Why would they do that with my truck?
Did they answer you?
No. They just said, yeah, that seems absurd. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. Because I didn't find that out. We got a check back from the dealership. It was like a $600 check. And we're like, oh, sweet. We must have overpaid them or something. It didn't have any kind of explanation with it. But I went into the license branch yesterday, and they were like, yeah, you're going to owe us 1% on that truck from the difference in sales tax between Ohio and Indiana. And they're like, did you get a check back from the dealership? And I'm like, yes, I did. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty much ours now.
Wow. They'll get you. They get you.
Yeah, they're just going to get theirs.
Yep,
so
they are.
I was pretty ticked off about that.
Taxes are a whole other episode.
Yeah, theft.
Ooh, I figured you were going to say that. Yeah. That whole... we could get in trouble on that one.
Yeah, maybe.
A little bit. We probably agree a whole lot on that one.
That's all right. We're off the fence. I'm off the fence.
You are off the fence. I'm so glad you're using that phrase because I knew how much you were like, no way, when we first started it. All right. Well, that should we end with something funny too?
What do you got?
I mean, other than kids, we're all gonna die. So
We should,
that's our final comment for today. Death is certain.
nothing matters.
I don't know about that.
We're just
but-
creeping towards death.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Nothing like a
stop.
little positivity for Mr. Menz.
Yeah. All right, that's all for today.
Remember, if you're a student at GCHS,
Email us a question. Yours might be next.
thanks for listening.